Hi everyone and welcome to the pre-release session for our Aurora agent, the custom Sigma-based EDR. I thought it would be a good idea after the teaser session in November, I think it was November, to give you an overview over the features, the final features that made it into the release. These features are not only detection related. Also, most of the features that we have developed in January, February, and March are more related to the deployment, also diagnostics and features that should facilitate the deployment of the agent and the long-term operation. For everyone who's new to the idea or to that product that we are going to release, Aurora is a Sigma-based. It's an agent that applies Sigma rules on endpoints. It does this directly on the endpoint using data that it observes in ETW event channels. That's the event tracing for Windows, and it's managed locally via config files or centrally from a central ASCAD management server. It's one of our commercial products and should help you to manage the rules and rule sets, updates on these rules from a central location, a more comfortable way to handle all the tasks. So Sigma, as I said, it uses Sigma, but it also extends the Sigma standard with so-called response actions. These response actions are a simple extension to each of the Sigma rules, and these responses can be of different kinds. We have predefined responses and custom responses that you can define yourself. I have a dedicated slide for that feature. So you can consider it your own Sigma-based EDR endpoint detection and response, the response with a response action. But it's not what others mean by EDR. So we use that term, but I guess that many of you, when you see what it does in the end and what it is, would say it's not an EDR per se, but it's very similar, and we tend to compare it with Sysmon, but Sysmon is just like a log producer, and Aurora is more an observer, matcher, and then responder. So it is some kind of an EDR, but it has some of its features are very different from the EDRs that you know. So Aurora Agent Lite is a product that we will offer for free. So the only thing that we require is a newsletter subscription for the Aurora Agent. Then you would get a license for 1 year, and this license will be renewed after a year. You will get the next license, I think, 2 weeks before the first one expires, or the previous one expires, and then you can use it for private and commercial purposes. So there is no big limitation to it. We have some limitations in the EULA for managed service providers and people that would like to sell it as a product or sell it as a service, but you can use it in your company, small, or in your organization, private or in a commercial context. So to compare it with Sysmon, because Sysmon is something that people already know, and by comparing these two agents, it makes it easy for someone who already knows Sysmon to understand what the differences are and what Aurora really is. So when we look at this comparison table here, you will see that Sysmon uses a kernel driver that gets installed on an end system, and Aurora just taps into the ETW event channels, which means that we do not hook any functions. Like it should be, we think that it should be possible that you install Aurora side by side with an EDR agent on an end system. This should not produce any operational issues, maybe some false positives inside of the EDR and Aurora, but it should not produce any stability problems on that end system. And The next comparison point is the Sigma rule event coverage. I had this in the original slide deck, because I wanted to compare what Aurora and Sysmon is able to see, but this has changed over time. So there are some things that we cannot see, like named pipe creations. These are not reported in any ETW channels. We have already been in contact with Microsoft to see if we can work on these deficiencies or lacks of information, and they told us that they cannot estimate the demand for these changes. So we will see. But we have also added things that events that are not available in Sysmon. So the comparison, this 100%, 95% is not true. It's not the true, and it's very difficult to paint a complete and correct picture of the coverage of both solutions. I will try some. I will try I will try to compare them in a later talk slide deck, but not in this one. The relative log volume, point number 3, is very, very low because we only produce logs for matching events and some statistics that Aurora produces, heartbeats and the like. But the log volume should be very, very low compared to other logging solutions like other EDR agents and other and Sysmon in this case. We do Aurora does Sigma and IOC matching on the endpoint. So it's not. This is a difference to the initial teaser talk that I gave. We do not just apply the Sigma rules, but we also apply IOCs that we as Nextron and the users can provide in configuration files. So you can, for example, pull IOCs from your IOC management system, put them in the folder in the right format, and then they would also be applied on that end system, which is pretty cool. We have included file name patterns. It's not just file name IOCs. When people talk about file name IOCs, it's often just a very specific file name, but in our case we use regular expressions to allow for file name patterns, which is a very effective method. I think I have a separate slide for that. Sorry. So the response actions is something that we have. I've talked about that. The resource control. So we limit the CPU usage that Aurora requires. Now causes. Sorry, and we also throttle the output. So enable you to throttle the output. In the default setting, there is some throttling in place already. So the defaults are already sane and good. You should work with them and only change them if you think that they are not correct in your use case. So this helps you in cases when let's say someone has introduced a Sigma rule that produces a lot of matches on an end system, which could happen, and in that case, that output throttling would throttle down the matches produced by this Sigma rule and only generate a certain amount of events per minute, I think. This should help you a lot in these cases. So we have different outputs. Sysmon and Aurora output to the local event log. That's also the default output for Aurora. You can configure it to output to a local file, to a TCP or UDP target, to a target transported via TCP or UDP. And you can also define if you want to log it in plain text or in JSON format, which is very useful. For example, when you ingest that data in let's say Splunk or a logging solution that handles JSON input, and then you can directly use that output as your input and do not have to parse events, things like that. Yeah, I added lines so that the risk of blue screens should be very, very low due to the fact that we do not have to introduce a new driver on that system. The CPU load is limited, as I said before, and we also don't have problems with incomplete configurations. Um, we noticed we worked with a Sigma rule base, and when we first tried out Aurora in our test infrastructure, and we noticed that we got a lot of false positives with rules, with very old rules, and noticed that that we think that the problem with these rules was that most of the people out there use Sysmon with configuration provided by Swift on security, and our own Sysmon configuration is based on that very good um, um, configuration. It's a configuration that that suits many use cases, but we noticed that there are a lot of gaps in that configuration that cause that certain rules would never trigger because the events on which they trigger would never be generated by the Sysmon configuration used by the majority of Sysmon users. So this showed us that you can make, it's not an error, it's just you missed out certain events that should be logged, and we don't have that problem with Aurora, because when you use a new Sigma rule in Aurora, you directly match them on the ETW events, and you have no filtering instance in between, like a Sysmon config. So what are the key benefits of Aurora? Um, when you compare it with a standard EDR, we often say that we provide 100% transparency, which means that you can always see why a certain event was triggered, why a rule triggered on a certain event. Sorry. Um, in EDR systems, it's not always the case. In our case, you can always look at the source, the in the public GitHub repository, and you can also look at all the configuration files. There are configuration files in the log sources subfolder of the Aurora agent that you can look at and see which of the ETW channels we tap into, and which fields we map to each other. So everything is open and for you to inspect and extend as well, and change. Yeah, you can even, if you say a certain ETW channel does not provide you with relevant information, you can simply switch it off by disabling it in the configuration file, and then you would gain some resources on the system, CPU cycles, by not looking at this certain channel. It's highly customizable. That's the second point here on that slide. So as I said, you can configure it for so that it fits perfectly to your use case. Yeah, the minimal network load and storage costs. So as I said, we would only generate events when a Sigma rule triggers. So you would have only a few events. It's perfect for remote locations with connections with low network bandwidth, for example, because you wouldn't have to transport gigabytes of data over that channel. You only would have to transport a few kilobytes per day of the events generated by Aurora. Could help you save a lot of network load and storage costs. Another benefit is that it's completely on premises. There is no data. There is no channel on which your confidential data could leave your organization. Even the update process of the agent can be turned off. You can update the agent on a central system, on a staging system, for example, and then distribute it to your end systems, and they would never talk to our update servers. And all the data that you produce or are produced by the Aurora agent stay within your network and never leave it if you don't decide to do that. So this is something that our first beta customers liked a lot. They have a lot of confidential data, and they wouldn't send this data to somewhere, to a foreign cloud in a foreign country, controlled by a different entity. So as I said, you can limit the resource usage of the agent to a certain CPU level. When you limit it to a level that's very, very low, it would obviously drop some events, and not it would not be able to observe them. There is some caching in place that could help, that helps work over certain spikes in the CPU load. If a backup process or an antivirus scanner produces too many events in an amount of time, it would cache some of the events and then process them afterwards when the CPU load has dropped to an acceptable level. And we offer a free version, the Aurora Lite agent, which I already mentioned. You can download it, try it out. It has some limitations. It uses only unencrypted signatures, and you only can configure 5 response actions. There are some limitations in that agent, and the modules are not certain modules are not included. For the details, just visit the website. There is a section that explains what the Pro version provides. But you can try it out, and it's also often something that you won't get from anyone. Like you can use Aurora Lite for months and then decide if you want to upgrade that agent to the professional version with more features, and it's totally up to you. I've already talked about response actions, and this is a slide also from the teaser session. I would just like to explain it for the people that have not seen the teaser session. The response actions are an extension to the Sigma standard. We have designed the Sigma standard in a way that you can, as a vendor or as an organization, extend the Sigma rules by fields that are optional. So your own fields, for example, a SOC could add certain fields to the rule, and these additional fields wouldn't invalidate the complete rule. So you could still use them in the converters and anywhere else. So in our case, we have added the response section, which includes or which can include, it depends on you. It can include certain response actions. Predefined actions are kill. I think we have kill, suspend, and dump. And they have also certain flags that you can use for ancestors. And if you want to restrict the kill of ancestors to only low privileged processes, which helps you in case of phishing attacks. We have tested this out in our testing environment. When you, for example, you have a Microsoft Word process, and that process has a sub-process which is PowerShell, and then you have a Sigma rule matching on that sub-process, then you can instruct the kill action to clear all the processes that have low privileges up to the Windows Explorer process to get to remove all kinds of processes that could be related to that malicious activity. It's complicated. I have an extra slide in the slide deck in the end, in the extra slide section. If you are interested to know how this works out, just have a look at that slide. I will share it on the GitHub afterwards. So these are the actions. You can define custom actions, and you can contain threads in less than a second. We ship Aurora with so-called response sets, and one of these response sets is aims at ransomware. It is also included in the Aurora Lite version. it should reflect the response actions from my other tool called Vaccine. Vaccine is a ransomware vaccination tool. I called it vaccination tool. And what we try to do is we try to provide a response set, a set of responses for already included Sigma rules that would reflect the activity of vaccine. So it should help you in a generic way to prevent ransomware infections. You can look at it. We are not sure if we should include other rules in that set. Your feedback would be appreciated. Aurora, the first steps. Okay, let's look at what you will get when you download the Aurora or the Aurora Lite package. In that package, when you extract the package, you will see something like this. These are the contents of the Aurora folder, the extracted Aurora program folder. And what you do is you place your license file that you will get via email. You place it in that folder, and then you will see the agent in a 32-bit version and the 64-bit version, and the Aurora agent utility. Alongside with the binaries, you will find 4 configuration presets that we ship with the agent that you can use, and we recommend you to use. So there is a standard preset that's used by default, so you don't have to set it as a command line flag if you don't want to use a different one. There is a signature subfolder with all the Sigma rules in it. The log sources explain which of the ETW log sources we tap into and subscribe to. The docs folder contains, I think, license recognitions and links to the online manual. And the custom signatures folder is for your for the use with your custom Sigma rules and your custom IOCs. And that's it. The first run. What you should do first is you open up a command line as administrator. You move to the folder where you've extracted the Aurora agent, and then in that folder you run Aurora agent 64.exe on a 64-bit system, obviously, and then you will see Aurora starting, like here in that screenshot. The thing is, you can run Aurora in 2 different ways. You can run it standalone, as right from the command line, and see the output in the command line, and you can install it as a service. There is an advantage when you can use Aurora standalone in the command line in a way that you could run it with some EDR of yours, or a remote administration tool. You don't have to install it as a service. This makes it very, very flexible. I'm sure you will figure out a very nice use case. We have seen people do this with Thor in the past, and we have seen all kinds of weird stuff, how users like to run Thor on an end system, and Aurora gives you the flexibility to run it in many different ways. You can stop Aurora with Control-C. When you run Aurora and type --help or provide the --help flag, you will see the complete help with all the flags provided by the agent. Don't worry, don't worry, you won't need all the options. The options are reflected in the configuration files, and as I said, we ship Aurora with presets, so you only have to care about the presets as long as you don't want to dive deeper into it. So in the next step, you should also try to install Aurora as a service. The only thing that you have to do is start the command line as administrator, run Aurora agent 64 -- install, and then you would install Aurora on an end system as a service, as a Windows service. The cool thing is, as soon as it is installed as a service, you can run Aurora agent 64.exe -- status, and then get a complete status of that agent, like how many events it has observed so far, how many Sigma matches have occurred, which are the active modules, a lot of information. Yeah, that's what you will see. Manual, you will find a chapter that includes function tests. One of the function tests that I would recommend you to run is a simple who am I /priv on the command line as administrator, and you would get the first Sigma match in your local Windows event log. We recommend you to look at it in the details view, because the general view only contains a short an extract of the information that you get in the details view. So we'll see an Aurora event with event ID 1, and in the details view you will get all the details on this event. This is the first function test that you should run to verify that Aurora is working and running as expected. When you install Aurora as a service, it will also install 2 scheduled tasks to update the program and the signatures. You will find these scheduled tasks in your in the task scheduler library on your Windows system. You can disable them if you don't want all your end systems to speak with our update servers. In that case, you have to handle the updates yourself. Like run Aurora agent util on a staging server, update the agent there, and then distribute the updated agent and signatures on your end systems. You may ask, isn't there an internal service that we can install and pull the updates from there? We have not thought about that, because we expect that people that want something like that would use our ASCAP management platform, and all the Sigma rule agent, the Sigma rule management and the Aurora agent management will be available in that web user interface. You can update agents according to a schedule that you define. You can update certain agents to new versions and hold other systems back, and you have all kinds of different options to manage the agents and the signatures on your end systems from the ASCAP management system. So you have to do it yourself if you don't want to use these update tasks that we provide. Okay, great. Aurora is up and running, so let's have a look at some customization options. You can disable the local event log output, and if you want to only send the events to a remote theme system or a log collector that you use, you can disable the local event log output with no event log. You can log to a file with the flag log file. You can instruct it to log to a certain file within a certain format. If you choose --JSON, it would be logged in a JSON format to that file. It automatically rotates these files after, I think, 10 megabytes in size, and only keeps keeps it for 7 iterations. So it should not take more than 70 megabytes on your disk if you decide to write to a local log file. And you can send the log output, as I said, to a remote system, UDP or TCP, JSON or plain text. I've already mentioned the configuration presets. So there are 4 shipped with Aurora, with the package. There is a standard. You don't have to specify it on the command line, and there is a reduced preset. It reduces the CPU limit to 30% and also sets the minimum level of matching Sigma rules to high, so you won't get bothered by Sigma rules of level medium and low. The minimal level reduces the CPU load even more and also has some limitations in visibility, but nothing that's really something that you don't want to lose. So there are some limitations, but the minimal preset is meant for systems with very low system resources or production systems. We sometimes have customers with systems that run on Windows 7 with 1 GB of RAM and a single CPU core, and on these systems you may want to choose this configuration to avoid really any kind of instability or load on these systems. And the intense flag is used for high-end systems. I myself run on my private system. I run it in the intense mode. I have a system with I think I have an 8-core system, and I don't see a lot of CPU load in that mode on that system. It runs pretty well, but I would not recommend it on systems with only 2 CPU cores and where stability has top priority. The intense mode is meant for researchers or paranoid users. It closes the registry detection gap that is completely described in the online manual. It is. I would not recommend using it in production, not yet. So I also mentioned the response presets. We have a preset shipped with Aurora that's called ransomware. You can activate it. The only thing that you have to do is you run Aurora --install response set ransomware, and if you choose to directly activate the responses, you also add the flag activate responses. If you do not add the flag activate responses, you would see simulated blocks in the event log. This is important for our customers and all kinds of users that you can simulate the blocks of simulate the actions, the response actions. You would only see what Aurora would do if the responses would be activated. In that that allows you to add responses to your Sigma rules, let them run for a week or a month and see how many responses would have been triggered and how many processes would have been killed by the rules, to give you more security, a better feeling. That's why there is a specific flag to activate the responses. Okay. Yeah, more information about that. So now let's come to the cool stuff, the stuff that I really like. As I already mentioned, the IOC application is also now part of the function set of Aurora, the Lite and the Pro version. In the Lite version, we only include the IOCs that are published in the public GitHub repository. The Pro version also uses all IOCs that we also use in Thor, our APT scanner. This includes file names, C2, domain names, IP addresses, name pipes, handles, file hashes of all kinds. And it also includes the very effective file name patterns. I have some examples here on the right as a screenshot for you to look at. These file name patterns are highly effective, and from my point of view, they are also highly underrated. Malware and attackers use certain patterns when they drop their malicious files loaders, implants on a file system. And what we do is we simply describe these patterns in regular expressions. As you can see here on the right side, you see that there is a pattern for the LSASS dump files that attackers and tools use. So even if Aurora isn't able to detect the process dumper that creates a process dump on disk, it would be able to identify a dumped LSASS process just by the name used by the tool. If it starts with LSASS and has a DMP ending or a zip ending or a RAR ending or a 7C ending, then it would generate an event. The second column here contains a score used to determine the level of the event that Aurora generates. We also have all of these mentioned file name patterns here on the right are highly effective. You see executables dropped in the program data folder, or suspicious archives created directly in the program data folder. This is something that you see from all kinds of thread groups, and not just from one. It's all kinds of thread groups use these folders for their staging. They often use the folders that can be addressed via an environment variable, like the program data environment variable or the public variable, which is the user's public folder. And here you see in the fourth example, you see the locations in the appdata and appdata local, appdata roaming folders without subfolders, directly in these folders. If a process would create a file there or execute it there, or if a driver would be loaded from this location, then Aurora would generate an event for that specific file name pattern. Much more effective than you think. If there are fellow DFIR analysts in watching this stream, they would certainly agree with me. Unique new fields. Yeah, we thought if we have only a few events, if we generate only a few events with Aurora, wouldn't there be information lost? Or shouldn't we add as much information as possible to that, to these few events, so that analysts can evaluate the complete event just from a single event? And we thought, okay, let's add fields that would help us evaluate the threat, the possible threat. And therefore we decided to add new fields, like the grandparent command line on grandparent image and grandparent process ID, as well as a process tree field. The process tree field is really cool. It includes when you have an executed process, it includes a concatenated string out of all the parent processes of that image. So in what you could do, I described it here on the left side. What you can do is you can write a rule that says if a process is PowerShell and somewhere in its process tree you find W3 WVP Windows IIS web server process, then this would trigger the rule. Up to now, we always had the problem that if a web shell does not directly call PowerShell but calls it via cmd.exe/c, for example, then you wouldn't have the web server process as a parent of PowerShell. It would only be a grandparent, and would also be visible in the process tree field. So you can generate really a new category of rules with these new fields. There's another field called file age, and one of my developers looked at it and said, why would we format the creation date of that file in that form, like 00 day, 00 hours, and minutes and seconds. And I said because it makes it much easier to create rules for it. Like you don't have to use the file stamp to you don't have to use the file stamp and do some date time arithmetics on it. In that case, you can simply write a rule that looks for like access to the LSA's process memory, and the file age field, the value in the file age field starts with 0 days, 0 hours, 0 minutes, which means that the file that accesses the LSASS process has been created in the within the last 60 seconds, which is, I think it's a nice field to have, and you can write much better rules for phishing attacks, in which the files that do the malicious activity, they appeared on disk a few seconds ago, and you can write rules that rely on that field for the Aurora agent. Okay. Cool feature of Aurora. You can instruct Aurora to frequently report back statistics. The idea is that using these statistics, you can, or using these messages that appear, I think the default interval would be 1 hour. So every hour you would get that information on the running agent, how many events it has observed, how many Sigma rules are loaded, how many Sigma matches it has had so far, and what you would also get is statistics on the observed events per event channel and the differences to the last interval, which is very cool because on the theme side you could then write alerts that would alert you if you would see an agent that still reports back its statistics, but some of the event channels that usually contain hundreds or thousands of new events compared to the last interval would suddenly only contain 0 events. You would be able to see if someone tampered with ETW channels and had completely disabled them. This could be useful when to monitor the integrity of the agent on the end system. We've also included a check for extraordinary event producers, which means if Aurora finds that on an end system there is one process that produces more than 50% of the observed events, then Aurora would generate this event with ID 107 that tells you there is this high event producer process, and maybe you want to exclude it in the process exclusion list. Aurora provides a false positive and a process exclusion list, and you can add that process. In this case, it's Microsoft Defender here in that example. You can include it in the process exclusion list, and this process would then not be observed in the future, which means that Aurora would use much less CPU cycles, and it would free up resources. We have also included a diagnostics pack. So if you use Aurora Lite on the Aurora in your network, and someone reports that Aurora consumes a lot of CPU usage or memory on a certain system, you can instruct him to run or remotely run the Aurora agent util diagnostics command, and then it would create a diagnostics package with information on the configuration of the agent, on the observed events, on high event producers, and so on. You would be able to debug the situation just with the help of that diagnostics pack. Very useful. You can also specify a custom service name. Like if you don't want to use Aurora agent, you can set any agent name that you like. This is also something that Sysmon provides, and in our case, we also thought that it would be a good idea that you can run it with any any possible name that you would like to use. So getting started. Um, there is an Aurora page that's not yet published, but we are going to publish that page at the beginning of April. If you want to try the Aurora Lite agent, then you would just have to visit that page, scroll down to the download button, and download the Aurora Lite agent after filling out the subscription form. If you want to test the agent with all the features, with all the detection modules, the most important detection modules are the LSASS process dump detector module and the Cobalt Strike beaconing module. These are the what I would say are the important ones that I would really like to run on my end systems. Yeah, can just send us an email and we would provide you with a trial license for that. I have some extra slides. I will leave them in the slide deck so that you can look at them on the GitHub repository. I hope you enjoyed the small web session. And I hope you enjoy Aurora when we release it. Fingers crossed. I hope if you have any questions, you can contact me on Twitter. Let me know what you think of Aurora and see you soon. Bye.